Okay, so I've got my outline of the plan at the point I want it. I might come back to the shop front later, but the rest is pretty much the way I want it.
Yeah, because I'm going to change it and do it to...
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So yes, that could change. There's no real need to draw it up the way it is. But what I want to do want to show you is how to make some layers before I then look at taking this into Photoshop. So I'm going to go to Layer Properties, this big button at the top. And if you've used layers in Photoshop or other programs like that, you should be fairly familiar with this. It's basically the same. So layers in AutoCAD are essentially used to group things together. The difference between AutoCAD and Photoshop, though, is that the order doesn't matter. So they don't stack up on top of each other like in Photoshop. They're all basically at the same level. Yeah, so it's just for grouping things, which is really helpful. So when you bring up Layer Properties, it's this button here. It's the first in that group of 4 little buttons that makes a new layer. So you'll see that there are layer standards that people will try and get you to use, and that's not a bad idea if it's useful. But if it's just for you, you can just give the layers the names that make sense for what you're doing. So I'm going to make a layer called Walls. Later I might make a layer for new walls that I'm going to put in. But for now, I just need walls. And I'm going to change the colour to, again, a colour that suits me. So I know that these walls are bricks, so I'm going to choose a colour that looks like the colour of bricks. Yep. And so I'll make another layer, and I'm going to call this Walls. Oh, no, sorry, I'm not going to call it Walls. I'm going to call it Demo. So that's for demolition. And now you can delete the extra things. If you don't want to show them at all, you can delete them. But I just want to show you how you can make them have dashed lines if you want that. So I've changed the colour, and then you'll see next to the colour you've got the option to set the line type. So continuous is a straight line. When you click there, again where it says continuous next to the layer, I've just clicked, and then I'm going to click load to bring in some other line types. So AutoCAD's got a huge range of preloaded line types. You can make your own if you want to, but this is fine for me to start with. And so I'm going to choose dashed. But actually, because I know dashed is big, I might need to change that, but I'll just do dash for now. And so you can see there, just make sure it does set the line type. Sometimes you need to remember to choose the line type after you've loaded it. So you can see there, it's gone into layer. And so then I'm going to make one more layer called above. And I'll change the colour of this just to make it a bit different. And then, do you know what small dashed lines are called? Not far off, hidden. But yeah, close. Hidden. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe in some programs they are called hyphen, but yeah, in AutoCAD and lots of programs as well, it's hidden. Yeah. So here you can see we've got hidden is another line type, but it's just another type of dashed line. Generally smaller than dashed. Okay, so I've got my layers. So now I'm going to close this. And then here it's good to go over the ways you select things. So notice I'm selecting left to right. That will select everything inside the window, and it'll tell you that it's a window because it's blue. So when you go left to right, you might have seen already, it's always a blue window at first. If you go right to left, it's green. And that tells you it's a crossing. It also has a dashed border, and that selects anything it's touching. So notice I don't need to go all the way around those lines, just to select them. Okay, so that can help you a lot with selection. It means you don't have to zoom in to select things, much better than Illustrator and other programs that have similar options. And so that can make your life a lot easier. So just remember that, left to right versus right to left. Select a little bit differently. So I've selected the lines that I want for my walls, and now from the list of layers at the top, we just choose walls. That's it. So they're on the new layer, but they're still selected, so I'm going to press escape to deselect. Then I'm going to select all of these other things, and notice how I can just select them all in one hit by going left to right. Because it gets everything inside, and it doesn't get my wall lines because they're not inside the window completely. Yeah, makes life a lot easier. Yeah. So here now I'm going to put them onto demo. They're going to be demolished. So I love demolition. It's actually never pay the builders to do my demolition. I love just getting in and smashing things with a sledgehammer. Did you see the Brady Bunch people doing that? Yeah, there, that was good. Yeah. So yeah, it's good fun. But be careful. You've got to, get a license. I've got a builder's license. I can do it. Yeah. Okay, so here notice I selected that one by going right to left and just touching it. Okay, now it's obviously on the right layer. Oh, sorry, this one actually. Sorry, that's not the right layer. That one should be on above. That's a line to show what's above. Okay, so they're on the right layer. I can tell that because of the colour. But then what about the line type, the dashed lines? When I zoom right in, you can see they are dashed, but they're the wrong size. And that's where people have the most problems with line type in AutoCAD, and other CAD programs are the same, because they have scale. Right, the scale can vary a lot. So you need to think about the scale when you look at things like a dashed line. So do you have an idea what scale you're going to be producing your drawings? Yeah, it should be 1 to 50, I'd say. So here, you can just click on the scale and then choose 1 to 50. We know that's our main scale. And then, here you've got to remember this little command, RE for regen. Oh, regen. So it's regenerate. It regenerates the whole drawing, redraws it, and then you can see the dashed lines are now at the right scale. And that's good, except all of my lines are now not long enough for the dash to fit. Most of the lines. This one it's okay, but the columns aren't. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and you'll see then why layers are so useful. I don't need to go and select each line just to change the dashed lines. I can come to my layers instead. I'm going to choose that dashed line type, and I'm going to change them to hidden. So now, because they're smaller dashes, we can see them. And so the problem now is that this dash line should have smaller dashes again. Do you know what the smaller dashes mean? So this big dash normally means it's below, and the small dash means it's above. That's the basic convention. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and so I want the above layer to be smaller than the demo layer. So I need a different line type. So I'm going to go to there, click where it says hidden, click load, and they've got this for you. It's called hidden 2. Right, so that's always going to be there, and it's just a smaller dash than hidden. And again, remember you need to choose it again after you load it. I wish they would just fix that, but anyhow, it's not a big deal just to pick it. And so now we can see smaller dashes than I had before. Right, so can you see how layers essentially used to manage objects as a group? If I want to change the colours, it's the same thing. I can just change the colour of my walls layer to be maybe a lighter colour so you can see it on the projector a bit better. And of course they just change. And that's a lot easier than going and selecting each line like you would in SketchUp. That's what you have to do pretty much. And that takes a lot longer. So that's the setup I want now to bring into Photoshop. So I'm going to go to the layout now and just give you a basic setup for printing. So notice before I was on the model tab down the bottom left. When you go to layouts, you can easily go back to the model tab to get back to where you started. But here again, I want to be on the layout 1. And have you done page setups in AutoCAD before? Page setups? No, okay. So I'll go through this slowly. So all you do to set up a page is right click on the tab and go to Page Setup Manager. So that should be your first step. Anytime you go to a layout, always set up the page first. So then, don't choose any special options here, just click Modify. And then, yeah, so you may have Adobe PDF. If you've got the Creative Cloud Suite on your computer, you'll have Adobe PDF. But if you don't, you can just use DWG to PDF. Okay, so make sure you realise what we're doing here is using or setting up a virtual printer. We're not going to print. A slight difference, but they both do the same thing. Yeah, they both make PDF files. So we're setting it up like a printer, but it's so we can make a PDF file. So here, now, I think we must have looked at this a little bit before. The page size. If you need to fit a 1 to 50 plan of this building on a page, how big do you think that page needs to be? It is going to be big. Now, yeah, we started to look at this before. That's right, it was A1. So that probably is the size you need to print. If you need to have the full plan on one sheet at 1 to 50, it has to be A1. So confirm that with Todd. I'm pretty sure he would have said that in the brief. Yeah. So that'll be good, and you should be starting to get into the routine of preparing drawings that you can bring into your design class and show your design and do pin-ups and get some feedback. So, page size. First thing, most important as well. When you're setting a layout, always know your page size. Set it here. What to plot should be layout. Another really important thing is the scale. Always, when you make a layout, make it 1:1. Even if you know later you might be changing it. Start off with 1:1. Don't try and set the scale that you want to print your plan in your print setup. On a layout especially. So that's it. So 1:1, that makes it easy. You always make it 1:1. But also double check that it's on millimetres. If it's on inches, your scale works really differently. And we don't need to worry about that. As long as it's on inches and then 1:1. And then the other option is plot style table monochrome. So what do you think that does if we make it exactly black and white? And pretty much all black. So white is the page and then all the lines will be black. And that's how you should print your drawings. So that's done. I'll click OK. Oh, sorry? Yeah, it could be very small. So don't worry, if your viewport's really small, just delete it. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click on the edge of my viewport. My viewport could be like yours. It could be really small like that. It's fine. I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to go back to my layers. And you'll see I've already made a layer called Viewport. But if you haven't already, you can just click on New Layer to make a new layer, like I have. Call it Viewport. And I think last week I showed you can just make it a colour that's going to stand out so that it's obvious when something's on it. But here the most important option is that we turn plotting off. So there's a little printer icon next to your layers. And so that means anything on that layer won't print. So I'll give you a chance to do this in a second. I just want to make the viewport. So I'm going to go to the Layout tab. And here, this is what catches most people out. When you're making things on a layout, you need to go to the Layout tab and then realise that the Viewport button is actually called Rectangular. So that button that says Rectangular, that makes these things called viewports. Right, and that's what we need to see our drawing. So here I'm going to click Rectangular, click to place 2 points and make a rectangle. So there's my plan. But then I need to double click to go inside it. And then down in the bottom right, set the scale to 1 to 50. Which is pretty close to what it was anyway, but you need to still make sure, really important that you choose that scale, or you can't be sure that it's right. And then what do you think I'm doing here to move the drawing around inside the viewport? Yeah, I'm in model space, that's right. And then how am I getting the hand to come up? Just to remind you.
Oh, you press down
the wheel. That's right. Press down the middle button, which is the wheel on your mouse, to pan. And you can pan to your heart's content because panning doesn't change the scale. What happens if I do this? If I zoom. with the wheel. What's that done? Exactly, it's changed the scale. That's good. So yeah, if you realise zooming and panning, so zooming and scale are the same thing. So you can't zoom after you've set the scale, or you have to then go back and reset the scale again. So the final thing I'll show you there before I make the PDF is that you should then lock the view to that scale. So next to the scale you can see there's a little padlock. Click on that. Go back to your page by double clicking on the page, and you can select the viewport border, and then back on the home tab change that to the viewport layer you would have made by that stage, and then under the file menu or the main menu, go to print. If you get this message, just choose the bottom option, continue to plot a single sheet. And I'm going to hit preview to make sure it's going to give me the right thing, and there we are. So that's what I want. So if you're happy with it, you can just choose print again up here, that little icon, and it'll make a PDF file. So I'll just do that, and I'm just going to save it somewhere that only I can get to. So you get a chance to do this in a sec. Okay, so I'm going to call it restaurant. You are still doing a restaurant, aren't you? Good. Restaurants are great. I'll show you a restaurant I designed up the road from here in a minute. So there we are. So that now is what we'll take into Photoshop in a little while. So anyhow, I'll give you a chance to do that, and then we can move on to Photoshop.